I started sim racing on one of these. Not this exact one, because it was a very, very long time ago. However, this was the first thing that I ever used to drive a virtual car. My first ever console, I think, was a Sega Mega Drive, so that's how long ago we took. I'm not comfortable with going into this any further. Some of the best racers that I race with use a controller. So the first thing I will start this video off with is saying that you don't really need all of this. Like, you can be a very competitive racer and race with people with full-on sim setups and potentially win. So if you, and I've been there, trust, if you can't really afford to have a full-on sim rig, wheel and all that good stuff, then don't feel you can't be competitive on one of these. For realism and the full experience, a rig, a wheel and all of that good stuff is a little bit necessary. However, I'm going to share with you today my sim setup and how it's really quite inexpensive depending on what you pick, and you can still have a really good experience. Right, so let's start off with the boring shiz first. Shall I start with what powers up my whole experience? My PC is one of my pride and joys in this whole setup. So when I first started streaming and doing sort of PC gaming, I had quite an old PC and it caught fire. I ended up upgrading to the beast that I have now. It's a Ryzen 5 3800X, I believe. It's got a RTX 3070 Ti graphics card and it has 48 gigabytes of RAM. Listen, I don't know how it ended up with 48 gigabytes of RAM. I had 16 gigabytes when I got it because it was a pre-made PC and I use it for editing, not just sim racing, and it was a bit slow, so I upgraded the RAM and ended up with 48. It runs perfectly. It runs all of the games. It runs iRacing, Race Room, Le Mans Ultimate, all that good stuff. Absolutely fine. And I can record as well in 1440. This was like £650 and I thought that was quite good going for something so capable. Next, I play Gran Turismo, and of course I need a PlayStation. So I have a PS5. I've one of the original ones. I don't have a Pro, and it's absolutely fine. If you want to buy a Pro, by all means go for it, but it's really not necessary. Honestly, what a waste of money. I've been a PlayStation fan since day one. I've had every single PlayStation, so I'm definitely a PlayStation girl. One of the things I love about Gran Turismo is it's plug and play, and I could just go in and race without too much complications. I would always buy a PlayStation visually, and the gaming experience all in all is always really, really good. Monitors are quite important. However, I do have quite old monitors now. I haven't updated my monitors since 2020, I think. So I run an MSI G322CQP. It's a 31.5 inch curved gaming monitor. I can't say it. Gaming monitor. It's a few years old now. In fact, it's about 4 years old now with 160 hertz refresh rate. I absolutely love the monitor. However, I'm getting some tearing now, and I think that's just sort of what happens. It's about 4 years old now, so I think it's getting to that point. But it was such a good buy for like £200 4 years ago. Honestly, I would say for someone like myself, I'm visually impaired, I'm blind in one eye, so I need everything I can to make the experience as clear as possible. And yes, again, I'm going to say it, there are better monitors out there right now, but for me this just works, and it works really well. I do have another monitor, but I don't really use it for sim racing. I think it's a Philips. Yes, it's a Philips. I use that mainly for everything else. So if I'm streaming, it'll have my chat, it'll have OBS open and all that lot, but I don't really use it for anything to do with sim racing. It's just a basic 24-inch monitor, nothing special. I have a Elgato HD60X, which is my game capture. That is for primarily the PlayStation, so it can be put onto OBS. That isn't a necessity to sim racing. I'll go over the little things. What you're currently looking at me at, is a Sony SLR camera. Not necessary. I'm a photographer. I had one laying around, so I use it. 2 sets of LED video lights. These are 192 LEDs. They are really quite cheap for what they are, and I absolutely love them. I'm obsessed with lighting. I was really surprised how good these are. I have everything on a tripod, different tripods to connect to my desk. My mic is a Rode podcast mic, or pod mic I think it's called, and that is connected to a Go XLR Mini. Don't buy them, they're rubbish. It's the worst thing I've ever bought. Oh, it just picks and chooses when it works. It's so annoying. Again, this is a necessity to your sim racing experience. If you want to be heard loud and clear, then this is quite good. However, it's not a necessity. Headset, HyperX. I actually got this for being part of EA Content Creators, and it used to have Grid Legends on it, but the sticker came off. Really like HyperX headset, and a good headset is quite a necessity to sim racing. You need to hear shit. I've always just used them, to be honest. I had a red one previously, and now I've got this one. I don't know which one it is. I could have researched it, but I haven't. But it's silver. You are welcome. You are welcome. I have a keyboard and a mouse, but they're not. It's not really a necessity to it, is it? I also have one of these. This was gifted by F1 Manager. They did a lot with F1 Manager, and they gifted it as a thank you. And to be honest, you could really set these up, especially in iRacing, to do various different things. However, I don't. This is primarily for when I stream, so that I can do different things. But if you've not got many buttons, these are a cheap, inexpensive way to add more buttons onto your wheel. This is a GT Omega Titan rig, and this for me is one of the best upgrades you can get. So I used to sit attached to my desk, wheel and chair, and that was uncomfortable. It meant that I couldn't really sim race for very long because I'd end up with a bad back, or it's just generally so uncomfortable. And when I say this made me faster, it made me more consistent, honestly, it's an understatement. If you've got a wheel, it's a must. And this was pretty inexpensive for what it is. I mean, the build quality is amazing, and it's going to last and last. It's really, really easy to put together as well. And I was very, very grateful because I'm partnered with GT Omega. So I was gifted this. Realistically now, if I needed to get another rig, I would grab a GT Omega again because they're just amazing. Honestly, stretch your legs out. It's the best thing in my setup by far. If you look back at my old racing videos when I was attached to the desk on a chair, I was so close and I was kind of like this and I was steering like this. It was really, really uncomfortable. And if you look back at my pace, there's been a considerable difference from my pace and consistency to when I got my rig. My wheel didn't change at that point. I was running a Thrustmaster T300 RS GT. My pedals didn't change, my wheel didn't change. However, my pace and consistency did, and it was definitely down to having a proper rig. The wheel. The second most important thing to a sim setup in my view, and I have the brand new Thrustmaster T598. Thrustmaster's brand new direct drive wheel at an affordable price. So I've had this for a very long time now, and there are pluses to it and there's some minuses to it. Best part of it is this. The direct axle drive is really, really good. I couldn't believe how when I turned it, it was so direct. Hence the direct drive. The belt driven wheel, you're very restricted to sort of changes that you can make on it. Having this ability to change the force feedback, all of that good stuff, it just means that I can go into more detail and change things with different cars. If I'm driving a GT3 car, for example, my force feedback and settings will be different to me driving an open wheel car, and having that ability of change, and yes, you can do some of that with a belt driven wheel. It's honestly, it's just night and day. The feedback is amazing, and I know it's only 5 Newton meters, and I know a lot of people are saying, well, is that enough? Yes, it's enough. Honestly, if you're using 10 or above, you must be so hench. Like, honestly, I've had this thing full whack, and I know I'm not the bonniest of girls. Like, I don't have big guns. I just don't. Seriously, it hurts. When you're driving a racing car, you're not restricted to turn it because it's so heavy unless you're crashing or you've got immense amount of understeer. For a PlayStation compatible direct drive wheel, you're looking £1,000. This will fit every need that you have. The pedals though, not quite sure on. See, if you're coming from a Thrustmaster T300 RS GT, I will say that the pedals are better. If you're coming from a G29, the pedals are massively better. However, I had the TLCM load cell pedals, and there is a bit of a difference between them. Don't get me wrong, the inputs are very smooth, they're very direct. You can change the spring force on them, but there's only 2 that comes with the pedals. But it's very muted. If you like a stiffer brake, for example, you like to replicate how a racing car brake would work, this isn't it, because you've got a lot of travel. The accelerator just has absolutely no strength in it whatsoever. I mean, for me personally, it's an easier experience, but I do notice that when I brake, it's immediate with a load cell, which you would expect. This, it's just, I mean, it is so small. If you're coming from a non-load cell pedal, you'll probably will find it's amazing, but if you've got a load cell pedal, probably stick with the load cell pedal. They have got a load cell coming this year, so keep an eye out for that. I also don't like that it's a jack attachment to it, a headphone jack style attachment. I really don't like that. Look, if it works and it stays and it doesn't break, by all means. However, I just think it's a really flimsy connection. I just don't like it at all, and I don't really trust it. Another area that they've juiced with cost is definitely the wheel. It's fine. There's nothing really wrong with it at all. It's just a bit cheap. So the attachment of it is very, very easy. It's a nice looking wheel, to be fair. It's not the worst wheel I've ever seen. It is rubber and this is plastic. I don't like that. I just don't like I don't like it. It's clunky. Ugh. No, I just don't like that. I don't like the button setup. It's a ball ache. I'm sorry, it really is. Going from there to there is a pain. It's a pain. I just don't like it. I have something wrong with me called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. It basically means that I lack collagen, so my joints are able to hyperflex out of place, and I can dislocate myself very, very easily. I've dislocated myself trying to press them buttons. Now, this is only a me problem. I'm being honest, unless you've got EDS2, it is probably not going to be a problem for you, but I can't tell you how uncomfortable it is when you dislocate your thumb whilst racing. Because of the attachment, it means that a lot of their other wheels are compatible with this. There's really no reason why you would want to change it unless you're fussy. It works. Everything does as it should. There's no delays with it. It's just a little cheaper. That's all. But if you're buying this set, you're buying it for this. And it is so, so good. I like it as a whole. There will be things that I will do. I'll probably revert back to my load cell pedals. I will probably change the steering wheel. I have no plans to upgrade this. And I have my T300 for years. And I didn't really have any plans to upgrade it until I saw this. My setup is probably worth about 3.5. That's still a lot of money, but compared to how much you could spend, it's a lot less. And a lot of the bits that I have, you don't need a mic. You don't need a second monitor as such. You know, you could make this a lot cheaper. This is around £400. This is £500. That's nearly £1,000. Your monitor, which you probably already have anyway and won't need to add on to it, that's really all you need. So for that, you could go for something around £1,000. I love it. I love my setup. I've come a very, very long way. I really enjoy it. It's a much more enjoyable experience having a rig and a wheel, a better overall experience than a controller. However, I will say this again, I know very fast people that are faster than me on a controller. So don't ever feel that you have to have all of this gear. It's really not necessary. And if you do enjoy racing game content, I play all sorts of racing games from arcades all the way through to sim. So make sure you are subscribed. And if this video was helpful in any way, shape or form, tickle that like button. Thank you so much for watching.